Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Saturday, the 19th day of April, 2025, and we have a huge story to begin the program with. In the headlines, if the news from Rome is correct, then it will not make Israel happy. In fact, it will place it in a no-win situation. Since it's the Sabbath, we'll have to wait a number of hours for any response from Israel, but we know this, they will not respond in a positive manner. In other words, it's going to leave them the option of going it alone against Iran, as our third headline indicates. So, what are we talking about? Here's the first story. Tehran offers a three-phase nuclear deal in the Oman talks. In other words, there has been a written agreement, a written deal that this morning, according to reports, that Iran has given Steve Witkoff, and we'll talk about that. Now, that brings us to the second story. Israel, the U.S. are ready to hit Iran if the talks fail, warns Brigadier General Amir Avivi. But this would be irrelevant if the first story is true, because according to the report, Steve Witkoff gladly accepted it, what Iran had to say. And finally, the third story, and here's where it really gets interesting. Israel still eyeing a limited attack on Iran's nuclear facilities that is apart from the United States of America. So this stuff is, to say the least, huge. Now, today on Your Bible Questions Answered, we're going to continue with the events of Holy Week. We're going to look at the burial of Jesus and the various precautions that were taken so that the body would still be there in the tomb. And basically what this does, what the Gospels tell us, it bulletproofs the story of the resurrection, why we know it's true. There's going to be three precautions that are taken, and that'll be the stone is rolled in front of the tomb, the Roman guard, and the Roman seal. And they did this to keep, Jesus basically keep his body in the tomb, keep it from being stolen. But as we look at this will set the stage for what we'll talk about tomorrow. When the women, two groups of women come to the tomb, at least five of them, two different groups come, and they got to find the stone rolled away, the tomb empty, and the body gone, and the Roman soldiers basically fainted because of the shock. And so, what's very important is what happened on the Saturday before the Easter Sunday, because we're going to see a number of things that set the stage, like we said, for the bulletproof story of the resurrection, why it's true, why God has basically covered every area to show us that it did happen just the way the scriptures say. So we really encourage you to look at that. That'll be later today. And then we'll have a second edition of breaking news from Netanyahu, who's supposed to make some big statement to the Israeli public at the end of the Sabbath. We don't know what it's about, but let me tell you, this story that's coming out of Rome right now will trump that. So let's look at what's going on. Here's the story. This is from the Jewish News Syndicate. It's the only place I've seen it so far. Tehran offers a three-phase nuclear deal in Oman talks. It's, again, Jewish News Syndicate. U.S. Envoy Witkoff welcomed the proposal, surprising the Iranian delegation in Muscat. In recent backchannel negotiations in Oman, Iran proposed the United States a three-stage deal aimed at capping the Islamic Republic's uranium enrichment in exchange for phase sanctions relief, according to diplomatic sources in Tehran. The proposal was delivered in writing by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff during the 3 hours of talk today, Saturday, reported the Iranian International. In the first phase, Iran would temporarily reduce uranium enrichment to 3.67%, the limit set under the 2015 nuclear deal, in return for access to frozen financial assets and permission to export oil. The second phase envisions a permanent end to high-level enrichment and renewed cooperation with the IAEA, that's International Atomic Energy Agency, including the reinstatement of surprise inspections under the agency's additional protocol for verification of nuclear safeguards. This would be contingent on broader U.S. sanctions relief and European powers refraining from reimposing UN sanctions. In a final stage, Iran would transfer its highly enriched uranium stockpile to a third country, while the U.S. Congress would approve a new nuclear agreement and lift primary and secondary sanctions. Though Iran insists it's not pursuing nuclear weapons, U.S. intelligence maintains that Tehran has not made a definitive decision to build one. Witkoff reportedly welcomed the proposal, surprising the Iranian delegation in Muscat. That's Oman. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei also appeared encouraged by the outcome, calling the talks a good first step. However, skepticism remains. A diplomatic source outside Iran suggested Tehran's main goal is to stall for time to rebuild air defense systems and missile capabilities damaged in recent Israeli attacks. You think so? Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu claimed credit for undermining Iran's nuclear progress, while the IAEA chief Rafael Grossi, we talked about this, warned that Tehran remains dangerously close to weapons capability, urging greater international verification. All right, that's the story. Now, this would definitely be the worst case scenario for Israel. Indeed, it would give Iran time to build back their air defenses, to hide what they're doing from future inspections, and like we said, Israel would be placed in a no-win situation. Furthermore, and here's the real key, there's nothing said at all about curbing Iran's missile program or its continued sponsoring terrorism worldwide. In other words, if this is accepted, it'd be a total victory for Iran at a time when they're reeling from sanctions as well as their surrogates, that is Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, are being neutralized to a large degree. Now, we will have to wait and see if this story is accurate. But if the story is true, then this next headline would be irrelevant. Headline number 2, Israel and the U.S. are ready to hit Iran if talks fail, warns Brigadier General Amir Avivi. This is from Ynet. Avivi says it was up to the Iranians. They would prolong nuclear talks for months or years. Israel and the United States remain fully coordinated and are continuing to prepare for a possible attack on Iran, despite reports U.S. President Donald Trump blocked earlier Israeli plans to attack, according to Brigadier General Amir Avivi. Avivi told ILTV that Trump is aiming to get the most out of the diplomatic negotiations, but he does not expect the talks to last long. We know the Iranians. It depends on them. They will prolong talks for months and months and even years. But I think that the administration is crystal clear in its intention to have a very short diplomatic discussion, Avivi said. It's either that they start to dismantle their nuclear sites, or I think we'll see an American-Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear sites in the coming months. Well, if the story that came out of Rome this morning is correct, then there won't be any American-Israeli attack. And that leaves us with the option that our next headline is reporting. And here it goes. Headline number 3. Israel is still eyeing a limited attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. From Israel's perspective, this may be a good moment for a strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. They've not ruled out an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities in the coming months, despite President Donald Trump telling Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that the U.S. was, for now, unwilling to support such a move, according to an Israeli official and 2 other people familiar with the matter. Israeli officials have vowed to prevent Tehran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, and Netanyahu has insisted that any negotiations with Iran must lead to a complete dismantling of the nuclear program. U.S. and Iranian negotiations are set for a second round of preliminary nuclear talks in Rome on Saturday. Of course, this was yesterday, this story. But basically, here's the gist of it. Over the past months, Israel has proposed to the Trump administration a series of options to attack Iran's facilities, including some with late spring and summer timelines, the sources said. The plans include a mix of airstrikes and commando operations that vary in severity and could set back Tehran's ability to weaponize its nuclear program by just months or a year or more, the sources said. New York Times, as we know, reported Wednesday that Netanyahu was told by Trump in a White House meeting earlier this month that Washington wanted to prioritize diplomatic talks at Tehran, and he was unwilling to support a strike on the country's nuclear facilities in the short term. Here comes the but. But Israeli officials now believe that the military could instead launch a limited strike on Iran that would require less U.S. support. Such an attack would be significantly smaller than those Israel initially proposed. It is unclear if or when Israel would move forward with such a strike. Here's the key, especially with talks on a nuclear deal getting started. Looks like more than getting started right now. Such a move would likely alienate Trump and could risk broader U.S. support for Israel. Parts of the plans were previously presented last year to the Biden administration. 2 former senior Biden administration officials told Reuters, is a Reuters story, by the way, almost all required significant U.S. support via direct military intervention or intelligence sharing. Israel has also requested Washington help Israel defend itself should Iran retaliate. In response to a request for comment, the U.S. National Security Council referred Reuters to comments Trump made on Thursday when he told reporters he had not waved Israel off an attack, but he was not in a rush to support military action against Tehran. I think Iran has a chance to have a great country and live happily without death, Trump said. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for them. I think Iran is wanting to talk. They have a chance for a great country. No, they don't have a chance at all for a great country now with the Ayatollah regime, with this, this hardline regime of what's going on there. That's nonsensical talk. But I think what they're saying here, they're seemingly thinking, well, he's waving it off for now. Some of it seems are taking that as a green light for Israel to go on their own. It doesn't seem to be what is in Trump's mind, but we will see. Okay, a senior Iranian official said Tehran was aware of Israel planning and that an attack would provoke a harsh and unwavering response from Iran. In other words, Iran's waiting for Israel to go on their own and do something like this. A senior official from the Israelis government told Reuters no decision has been yet made on an Iranian strike. They haven't decided yet whether they're going to do it or not go alone. And so we have intelligence and reliable sources. Israel is planning a major attack on nuclear sites, and this stems from the dissatisfaction of ongoing diplomatic efforts regarding Iran's nuclear program. And also, they say, for Netanyahu's need for a conflict as means of political survival. This is the Iranian, spin on all this. So here again, here's a big question. Would Israel attack Iran without the help of the United States? Obviously, it would be much more limited than the one they had planned. In addition, Israel would be accused across the board of stopping the peace process. Now, there's more in this story, too, that the Biden administration pushed back a similar plan that Netanyahu told them during when they were in office. The Biden officials questioned the extent to which Israel's military could effectively carry out such an attack. As every story seems to tell us, former officials and experts have long said Israel would need significant U.S. military support and weapons to destroy the nuclear facilities and stockpile, some of which are underground facilities. While the more limited military strike Israel is considering would require less direct assistance, particularly in the form of U.S. bombers, Israel would still need a promise from Washington that it would help Israel defend itself if attacked by Tehran in the aftermath. And of course, it would carry risks, like the article goes on to say. And so the bottom line is this. To put it mildly, Israel would be in the proverbial no-win situation. Does it go against the U.S. as they are making an agreement with Iran, or does it let Iran continue with their journey toward a nuclear weapon? The U.S. is basically telling Israel it'd be pointless if you did this, because even if you did do something like this against our wishes, it would only set their program back maybe a year at most. And if we have an agreement, then that's a whole other issue. So you see the situation Israel's in right now. Again, if this Jewish News Syndicate story is correct, then basically Witkoff have welcomed this three-phased agreement that Iran has put in writing. And what it'll mean is that Iran has won again, won the whole thing, and the U.S. has fallen for it, and it's going to put Israel in a very dire situation. So this is where we're at right now, early morning here in the United States. In the West Coast, it's before 6 a.m. These stories have not come out yet from Israel because it's the Sabbath. It won't come out for a few hours. We'll talk about that on our second edition of Breaking News, and we'll see what happens. And so, like I said, it's not good news for Israel at all. It's the worst case scenario because if the United States enters into some agreement or some negotiations for a deal, believe me, this won't happen overnight. It'll take long term. And at the same time, remember, their air defenses are down right now, but China and Russia are helping them repair it. So any type of attack that will eventually come would be much more difficult in the months ahead, simply because their air defenses, which were neutralized last year, are in the process of being repaired. So that's why they always say time is of the essence. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, hopefully we'll see you later when we talk about on your Bible questions answered, talk about the burial of Jesus and the preparations for Easter Sunday, which were made, which the Jewish leaders assume would once and for all stamp out the belief in Jesus as the Messiah. And boy, did they have a lesson to learn, didn't they, on Easter Sunday? Because as we say, it was Good Friday took place, but Sunday's coming, and Sunday is the big story. Anyway, we'll be giving the basis of that today, so I hope you can join us. Until then, as always, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching, and may the Lord richly, richly bless.